comment. She may not make public comment, but I asked her to stay until the new business section where we're doing the proposed fee change.
That's it. I would cover the expert.
Yeah, at least in this county.
She's led a lot of legislation for the whole state.
Exactly, and she's also like the president of like the West Virginia Board Association of Tourism and stuff like that. So she's I would say she knows what she's talking about. So we'll have her in, which will be nice. And she'll give us the opportunity to.
And there he is.
How you doing?
We have a quorum.
There's Mr.
Good morning.
Lutman.
Hello, sir.
Good
Hi,
morning.
everybody. How are y'all?
So she'll come in and she'll talk about that and let us know what is like how they collect remittances on taxes and stuff like that for short-term rentals. I did print off. I also printed off a packet. Oh, you're handing them a packet?
I just need.
So that's a packet.
The April, I mean, the ones that are finalized. I printed.
So those are only agendas. So you need me to print you off in April? I can do
Here
that.
you
That
go.
would be
You
great.
can have mine.
Thank you.
You sure you don't
It's
need
not
it?
as pretty as.
You have it in your head?
Well, I have a little
Oh, cheat
sheet
sheet?
that I make
Got it.
myself with the key mounts.
Got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How's business, man?
Good.
So as we get glass and lumber,
There's
aluminum, we are being recorded.
I understand that, but is Karen on the line?
Karen is not on the line, Ann Smith is, so it'll be, Ann Wynn will be president today.
Okay.
Do we want to wait for Dr. Reedy or?
I'd like to,
Okay. We good?
35 seconds late. I think we'll cut him a little slack. That's good. You can tell by the way she walks.
Heard something.
Indeed. Good morning. Pulling down into your shoe there.
Yeah, these no-show socks. They
Yeah.
disappear.
Yeah.
Those look comfortable.
They're mostly more comfortable than dressy shoes. So
See Dr. Reed?
I have not.
Okay.
I didn't look for him while I was walking down because I was like, oh, it's late, I gotta go.
He's trying to make a PowerPoint. He's trying to send it to
He
you.
sent me a PowerPoint.
So he's planning on being here. Got it. Got
Is
it.
there any way we could start and then just
Yeah.
make sure that?
We can.
Yeah.
If he's late, we can just like maybe move his report.
I think we'll be.
I don't think he'll be
but I
that
think-
late.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we can start. soon.
Let's call the meeting in
Resuscitating
order.
somebody.
Okay, today is June 10th, 2022. We reviewed the agenda. Anybody have any question on the agenda?
So we're called to order at 9:01, right?
Okay, we don't have any question on the agenda. So let's move to approve the May 13, 2022 meeting minutes.
I have a proposed amendment, a slight change, a typo. It refers to Mason going to the Smoking Mountains. I believe, aren't those the Great Smoky Mountains?
No, that's
No, that's an exercise that we took part in with emergency management. It was the name of the exercise.
Was it? Okay.
There's a
That's
reason why
okay.
is it
Right.
was in and
So
around the
that's really
fact.
what it's called?
Yes.
That's
Smoky
really what
Mountains.
the exercise was called.
Yes.
That's interesting.
It's actually a fire emergency on up in Shenandoah, and
Smoking
because of
is
the
bad for you.
limited ability to get in there, if there was a road that was closed due to the fire, how would they get into there and how would they manage all of that?
Yeah,
That's
I
what it
had
was
to
about.
look it up.
I
to
said
make
the
sure
same
I
thing
had
too. I was like,
it
is this
right.
the Smoky Mountains?
Morning, Dr. Reed.
You're not alone, Elliot.
Okay. All right, well, I withdraw my proposed amendment.
I move to approve the May 13th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Everybody approves, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's Ian, we don't hear Ian. We got three
Make sure Ann is
people.
unmuted.
Motion pass.
Where is it?
She's the iPad.
Oh, okay.
Ask her to unmute. Okay, she's unmuted now. Good. Hey, Ann.
Good morning.
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 Welcome. All right, we move to public comments. Anybody like to make a comment today?
Check, see if anybody in the chat who's interested in making comments. I don't see anybody.
Okay. All right, no one want to make public comments. We've moved to unfinished business, update on vacancies.
Go ahead
So
and
the-
start yours first.
The sanitarian, I actually got a new list with about 11 applicants on there. So I have already reached out to them. I heard back from 5. So I'm starting interviews next week.
On the LPN, so
Actually, I want to ask a question. You guys are doing substantially better at finding candidates from like a year ago. Like, remember a year ago when you would come, you were like, I just can't get anybody to apply. Everybody's applying. Now you've got 11. Do you know what the difference is?
COVID.
Well, the 11 applicants, some of them, the applications have been in there for a while. So I'm not sure exactly what the state, because the state, they vet all the applicants in that field. It's an open, for sanitarians, it's always open, so people can apply and their applications stay now for 6 months. It used to be a year. So, but the state vets them before they send them to us. So I'm not sure exactly what this state does, but we're getting, I don't know, I re-advertised it and got,
You're agreeing that you're getting.
I did, yeah, I
More
am
than you
getting
used
more
to?
right now.
That's
So,
cool.
but I know at one point I had like 25 on one of my lists when Lexi applied, I think,
Okay.
so.
But I remember us meeting one time and you're like, there's
there weren't
nobody.
any.
I don't know how to fill a job when nobody applies.
Yeah.
At some points, the state purges people on their lists because they've
Well,
been on there.
my
And
last
not
list
all
was
of our
only 2.
applicants for different positions are local.
Okay.
They may be from Parkersburg and lived there all their life and have no interest in moving, but they check everything.
Yeah, and
It
that's,
seems more optimistic.
And we're always glad to see 11 compared to 1.
Okay.
and
None.
the 5 that got back to me are all like local, so.
That's good.
So they told me the trick to apply for government position is like keywords, like whatever they wrote on the application, on the vacancy, you want to use those words. So it's kind of a trick of the computer. It's most of the time it's filtered out by the computer. Not
Yeah,
like human.
that's probably true for federal government. I'm not sure if it's as true for what the state does, but I mean, I know a little bit about their vetting process. I know what they're required. So they're just looking at the basic requirements and making sure that they have the education. Although one candidate got through to me that didn't have their bachelor's degree. So yeah, it just.
Were they in school for one?
Mhm.
No.
Gino, you want to?
So, yeah, well, so we had an LPN position open up. One of our current LPNs moved over to the office assistant position. So now we have two office assistants at the front desk, which is great. Someone who has tremendous experience and knowledge of how the health department works. So we haven't had to train her. We don't have to train her very much. However, that left an LPN position opening, and through the state system, we did receive one candidate who may be a good candidate. I'm going to speak with her this afternoon. But I left it open and sent out a public service announcement to encourage people who have not registered through the state system to apply also. So an open invitation to an LPN. And I think we'll be able to fill that pretty easily, and we'll be pretty choosy on who it is that we bring in, of course. And so there we are. And then I think the social worker is definitely up to Dr. Reedy, but we didn't have any applicants at all for the social worker
There was
position.
one person who was hoping that she took another job.
Yep.
Before ours was even available on the state website.
But we'll post that again. Oh, and the new nurse director starts on the 20th. And she'll be part-time and she's awesome. So can't wait to have her on.
Have you reached out to Shepherd?
Of course, absolutely.
Nurse
And James,
social worker?
and James Rumsey.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually spoke with the director of internships at Shepherd on, what day was that, Dr. Reed? Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a beautiful day.
Okay, so we update on the social worker. Did my friend ever contact you? Okay, good.
So we are, for the COVID health disparities grant, there's several part-time people that we're interviewing on, representative of different minorities.
Excellent, thank you.
And she's gonna be great.
Oh, yeah, she's very, very good.
Yeah, thank you.
We continue discussion on cash revenue and the state rule code 6473, 8.13.
Yes. So I think what we decided last meeting, just to make absolutely sure, was that we are going to follow the West Virginia code on that. I think that was that the final decision by the board, is that we should follow the West Virginia code instead of going by the informal rule that we had previously.
Remind me of the code.
So,
again, what do we?
Okay, for just a quick overview for everybody, the West Virginia code stipulates that the health department needs to run a cash reserve equal to the average of the previous 3 months' expenses, which I'm sure that's probably how the county commission works and is required by the state to do it. So that would put us in line with the county commission and with state code. Our previous code, it wasn't actually a code, it was an agreement between the previous administrator, previous to Gillian, and the Board of Health, which was that it was the average, a 3 month, or they would take the average of the previous fiscal year's 12 months, the monthly average, and they would stipulate it, that they would extend it over a 3 month period. And then they actually included a $50,000 buffer on top of that. So, right, so the difference between, we discussed this, I wouldn't say argued, we discussed it and said we felt that, and Charlie and I discussed this also several times, that we felt that the previous 3 months was a much more accurate indication of what current expenses could be and coming expenses could be, as opposed to averaging out the 12 months of the previous fiscal year and then making a 90-day reserve based on that. So, and I think several of the board members agreed with that. I just wanted to get a final decision on that. Like, yes, we should be following West Virginia code, or no, we would like to codify our own version.
So with COVID, our budget gonna be a little different. So on a normal day, should we refer back to like 2019? Or how do you guys want to do it?
I mean, my quick, easy opinion is it's the previous 3 months, so it'll move with whatever the current environment is. If the current environment's nasty, it'll move with it. If it's great, it'll move with that also.
And you have, quarterly expenses, so it's always going to take into account those expenses. I don't think you're going to have any surprises.
It's going to adjust.
Yeah.
Every 90 days.
It's a dynamic system, which I think is important. If we add an employer, if we add multiple employees, it'll start taking that immediately within 30 days that those people are on, as opposed to using the previous fiscal year, which doesn't take them in for another,
And if you don't think it's conservative enough, you
could
can do better than what the state code says. Like you can add a buffer in, like we did.
Like the
previously.
50,000?
Yeah. Like
If I might inject something.
Yes, of course.
I agree with what you're saying. It's not really the code, it's the code of state rules, but it has the effect of law.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that it would probably make a lot more sense because you're as the director just said, you're flowing along with whatever the board is experiencing at the time to do the past 3 months. It says you have to do at least that. So you could do more.
My opinion is I'm not an advocate of being more stringent than state code.
I agree. Do we have to vote on this?
I don't think so. I think we just have to, No,
I'll
that-
make a motion just for clarity. I move that board's cash reserve policy be directly in line with West Virginia Code 64-73-8.3 and be three times the previous 90 days operating expense. That's what the code says.
so, no, you have to have I think you would be better explaining this
Oh, the previous 3 months operating expenses and it.
as a total.
Oh, okay.
In reserve.
I amend, my motion is that the board's cash reserve policy be directly in line with 64-73-8.3 and be that of the previous 3 months expenses.
Do we have a second?
Oh,
I second.
Thank you, Ann.
All agree, say yeah, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
I like that. Thank you. That gives really great clarity on something that has been bothering me the last
I think
few
it's
months.
Makes me feel better.
You know, Charlie and I have discussed this a few times and she could see it was causing me heartburn.
All right, we move to new business, Cox Holiday Young's update.
All right, so I'm gonna go over the April financials that were finalized. Cash balance of $540,000. For April standing alone, we had income of $328,000. Expenses, we had salaries and wages of $64,000 and operating expenses of $25,000. That gave us a surplus of $239,000 for the month of April. So that now if we look at July through April of 2022, that reduced our deficit to $33,000. Now if we start looking,
from.
it was, I don't have that number in front of me. It
okay.
was over $200,000 of net loss, or
That's what I wanted to.
Yeah.
So we usually about $30,000 in deficit. So now if we have a surplus, does that mean that we break even or do we mean that we have extra 30,000?
no. So we are now doing better than what we budgeted, but we're still trending in a deficit.
Okay.
So we just did really well for the month of April, and that reduced our deficit for the fiscal year. Now for May, we're still trending in the right direction. We had income of about $89,000. Salaries and wages remain consistent. We had $65,000 of salary and wages expense, and then operating expenses of $14,000. That gave us a surplus of $10,000 for the month. Therefore, for the fiscal year, reducing our deficit to $23,000.
So we're catching up.
Yep. So, we want to look overall in May. And now I will say these are preliminary. We're still working, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on getting May wrapped up. But as of now, how it stands, income is above budget by 14%.
That's great.
And then salaries and wages. And I also want to say that 14% is excluding the reimbursement for incentive pay.
Yeah, that should be a zero.
Yeah,
Zero sum.
because I also exclude it when I run the salary numbers. So salaries and wages excluding that incentive pay is above budget by 4%. 2 months ago, it was above budget by 6%. So we're trending better there. And then total operating expenses below budget by 9%.
So I just want to clarify, I'm always a stickler for terms.
Yes,
Income is really revenue. right?
yes.
Because it's not really income.
We
Yes,
should,
right.
we should probably change that in QuickBooks.
don't
So
know
we
if we
use the
can.
terms. Oh, yeah, we may not be able to. That's really a private
Sorry.
sector. bookkeeping.
Sorry to do a web lump and
Yes,
stick
and-
on word.
No,
No,
you're right,
okay.
Elliot.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You're right. We're a not-for-profit, so.
Now to go over the key metrics for May. The bank balance, $526,000. So I think that once we get everything reconciled, that's going to be higher. But still, we are in reserve. So I updated this to show the previous 3 months of operating expenses. We are in compliance with the reserve requirements. So the reserve requirement right now would be $261,000, and we are above that by $264,000.
Charlie,
Yes,
what is petty? How do we have petty cash? Can you help me with that?
I assume that there's just a petty cash box out front for any.
How much is it?
$800.
Yes, so we typically deposit at $500, but we do have to keep cash on hand for patients who pay in cash and be able to make change and things like that. But also sometimes we have permits that are paid in cash, so we have to have cash for that. Yes.
What is the cash? Like, how do you handle cash here? Do you have like a?
We have a
do you
system.
do you have like a retail establishment where you count the draw down, put it in the bag at the end of the night?
Yep.
for Small signatures?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Petty cash it's in compliance. Usually 2 people, if not 3, including myself,
Okay.
and we store it in a safe.
There's 2 signatures on the countdown.
2 signatures, yes, the cash bag person and the finance technician,
Okay, very good.
or myself.
I only ask. 'Cause
No,
I've had
absolutely.
plenty of businesses that cash has walked away.
You'd be crazy not to assume that could happen. And I've been in plenty where it's happened too.
So the biggest changes that I anticipate we'll see next month is related to the accounts receivable. So in May, we did receive $54,000 from West Virginia Treasury. However, I wasn't sure what it went to, and
I do know, remember we
okay.
discussed that they pay quarterly,
yes,
and that's when that $54,000 at the end of the fiscal year is actually a payment that's supposed to go to the Center for Local Health. Now, the Center for Local Health is defunct currently, so they have been dispersing that directly to the health departments. So the Center for Local Health now they're hoping to restore that so that we won't be getting that magical 5th payment, that 5th quarter payment that we've been receiving the last, maybe 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
5 years, I think.
It's been quite a while.
then.
And it's always between about like $40,000 to $60,000.
Okay, I was thinking that was a payment of one of your receivables, but then that's going to change your numbers, because I don't think it's a receivable in the books. So you're gonna have an increase in income.
Increase in state aid,
Mhm.
and revenue.
Then these receivable numbers are correct then.
How did that affect your budget that you created last time?
Well, last year, it put fiscal year 22 or fiscal year 21 into the black. That last little bit of payment. I think we ended up with a $30,000, $30-something thousand surplus.
Is that 5th payment, is it presumed in your budget?
It is not. It is not. It's
And-
definitely mad money.
Then it sounds like that if that is the case, that's gonna be a situation this year too.
I think we'll probably get it again in fiscal year 23 unless they really can ramp up this Center for Local Health quickly, which I doubt they can, but the state did just snipe one of the administrators from, I can't remember what, maybe Monroe County, I can't remember, to be the administrator at the reborn Center for Public Health, or for Local Health, Center for Local Health. And what they'll hopefully be is a state level agency with which we can coordinate and they can support us and give us expertise and things like that, especially for new administrators or for health departments who are maybe not as well managed as they could be.
Where's this located?
This is in, I believe, in Kanawha County.
Yeah, it'll be Trump.
It'll be in Charleston, somewhere in and around
It's
Charleston.
local for them.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be our main contact,
Correct.
but
And
they have
previously,
none of their positions filled for over a year.
they had like one person as the Center for Local Health for a long time, and then that person left.
Person is totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's as low as DC to us.
Less.
So I'm going to.
So that's what that
Okay.
is. If it came directly from the state, which is, it's
Okay.
the remainder of its remaining state aid.
Okay, it was really close to some of the receivable amounts, so I was unsure. If that is additional revenue for for May, that would put us at a surplus about $40,000.
Okay.
Then that also means these receivable numbers are accurate. Total accounts receivable at the end of May, $153,000. Average days to pay, about 25 days. Most of the receivable, 77% of it is related to the West Virginia Treasury. We have a current amount there of $27,000, but over 90 days is $91,000.
That's all grant related. So we're still waiting for the grant through the Bureau of Public Health. The grants are moving not particularly quickly lately. They've been hiring on new people, and other states and places have been sniping their grant managers. So you can understand why they're not going to pay as much as Maryland or Ohio.
No, that's the end. Unless you guys have anything for me. Anybody?
Thank you,
Do we
Charlie.
have a motion to approve the April financial report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
There we go.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right, we move to proposed Airbnb fee change. Discussion and action.
Isn't that on? Yes, she is.
She's supposed to speak in the.
Hi there.
Hello, Annette. So if
Hey.
you're unfamiliar,
Hi,
Annette.
good morning. I think I know a lot of you, but good morning and thank you for including me in this discussion.
Yes, that's
Hi,
Annette.
Gavin. How are you?
Hi.
Can you orient what's going on?
So I was asked to invite Annette by Karen to be able to provide any type of insight on how Airbnb or short-term rental tax receipts or short-term rental remittances to the tourism board and how she collects them and things and any questions you might have in and around that for amounts or any of those types of things, or how it could be possibly how permitting could be enforced and things like that for short-term rentals.
And that is fine.
Ms. Gavin, can you tell everyone what you do and how you help the community with tourism?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to. I'm the CEO with the Jefferson County CVB. It's the Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is the nonprofit that promotes the county. My role is to promote those great four small towns of Harpers Ferry, Bolivar, Charlestown, and Shepherdstown. And I am completely funded by hotel motel tax. That is a state code that passed back in the 90s. And that basically is a transfer tax from the visitor coming to the area, paying a local lodging tax, whether it's with a hotel, a B&B, or in this case now short-term rentals. And that transfers, it's a trust tax that transfers over to the municipality or county, and then they pay me half by state code. I receive half of that locality tax. In most cases, it's about a 3% tax I receive, and then the municipality and the county determines what they do with the other based on expenditures that are laid out in the state code. So for instance, in the county's the county transfers that tax to me, and the other half of the tax goes to Jefferson County Parks and Rec, Historic Landmarks, Jefferson Arts Council. So it's really, it's a great way to work out how we continue to market and promote the county. So it's kind of one of those situations, the more I do my job and our team here, the more we do our job promoting visitors to come to Jefferson County, the more there's an economic impact and an increase in those hotel motel dollars by their spend in our county. And then that transfers into more dollars for me to receive to market and promote the county. So it's kind of a great, it was done by Senator Oshel Crago back in the 90s. And he is still alive and a terrific advocate for tourism. But it was a perfect idea because, as we know, this is a model that's similar everywhere in the country. These CVBs across the country are the arm that really promotes their destinations in their areas. So with that, what I do is spend over about 50% of my entire budget goes to nothing but promotions, marketing, public relations, all of that, just to get more people back in the county. And it's been going on, I've been here 9 years, and it's probably about 6 years ago that we brought to the attention of even state delegates, senators, talking to them and saying, you know, these Airbnbs, and I apologize, that's the kind of what everybody thinks of as short-term rentals is the company Airbnb, but these guys aren't charging, collecting, and remitting the locality tax. Not only that, they're not, at that time, they weren't even charging, collecting the consumer sales tax. So we had a really big discussion, and the state, the Governor Justice took it on himself and had the legislation passed just 2 years prior to our legislation for locality tax, that now on the platform, the way it works is that you book through Airbnb, HomeAway, any of those short-term rentals platforms, and they are called a marketplace facilitator in the language in the new CV or in the new bill. And you book on the platform, and just like you do with any other hotel or any other B&B, the locality tax is right there on the platform. So they're charging it, they're collecting it, and in the new legislation, they are also remitting that to the localities, whether it's you are in a town, a city, or within county jurisdiction. And then it's up to them to send the checks out to the recipients of that hotel motel tax. When we argued this bill, we said it's not just a funding issue, because it was obviously really important to all of us. It's also a fairness issue. So it was just to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And I will tell you that a lot of Airbnbs are across the state, people who have short-term rentals, they didn't know. It wasn't, I will give at least 50% and probably more. It was about education. And then once they knew that they weren't getting the taxes collected and remitted, they also didn't really have a mechanism to be able to do it, right? It wasn't easy. It wasn't on the platform. So it was one of those few times when we had Republicans and Dems come together and say, yes, this makes sense. I can go into a lot more about it, but I can talk about some revenue dollars that I see. I'm spending now money this year on reporting, where I have a company who gives me updates every week on what the trend looks like this year versus last year, what the revenue looks like, what the ADR, all of that. And it's our board's intention to try to stay on top of it. And we also want to bring them in the fold. This is another diverse way we can provide lodging in our destination. By the way, we're number 2 in the state, according to even Airbnb, with the highest amount of revenue generated by these short-term rentals, only second to Pocahontas County. So that gives you kind of an idea. About 4 years ago, even according to Airbnb, they put out a public relations, they did a public relations campaign because there was a lot of negativity, you know, the bigger cities, San Francisco, New York, Tampa, Florida, all those guys were saying, Airbnbs are not part of our community. And so they did this big public relations campaign to say, we are working with hoteliers, we are working with tourism arms, we are working with destinations. And they came out years ago and said, West Virginia is one of those states that's about a $10 million revenue generator for just Airbnb. The numbers that Secretary Ruby and I just recently saw in the past 2 weeks, they forecast that number to be $100 million in the state of West Virginia. That's how big Airbnbs and short-term rentals are for us.
You're saying that Airbnbs are absolutely vital to satisfy the tourism industry.
I believe, I truly believe so. I bring them into the fold with everything. And as all of you know, we have the #1 visitor spend for the state. So we see, even in 2019, we saw about $840 million in visitor spend of the state's $4.7 billion. So we're the top visitor spend. Visitors are coming to Jefferson County more than any other county in the state. And we all know that we've lost a couple of hotels. We've lost a couple through COVID or whatever the situation is. I can tell you every week, every weekend, we are not able to satisfy the needs of people wanting to come to this destination by providing lodging. We're not. We are turning down or turning away people. And without those short-term rentals, we wouldn't even be close, So it definitely, for me, they play a key role in providing the diversity in our lodging.
Annette, do you know about how many short-term rentals we have in Jefferson County?
I can verify at least 200, at least. I can also say that there's some numbers we've been getting in that, and it might be because of the way they break down a unit inside of one particular home as multiple units, but they're Airbnb short, and there's a couple of the companies that are working together, Expedia and all those have now merged, some of them, and some of them are even saying as high as 300 for us. I can absolutely guarantee you there is no fewer than 202. I have a report that can say that. Unfortunately, you guys know how those reports work. I pay a lot of money to get that report. I can't share it, virally. I can't, send it out, but I can report about it.
Can you provide the source that you buy the report from?
Yeah, there are a couple different companies that offer this kind of dive into short-term rentals. The company that I am using, there's now about 6 CVBs across our state that are using it because we researched and found this company. The most popular one was a company called AirDNA, and that's where Secretary Ruby gets hers, AirDNA. The second company that has come up and that has been out there for a while is the one that we're using, because what she uses with AirDNA says a whole map of the state. It doesn't really dive down into your locality the way we want it. It doesn't give you the forecasting numbers quite the way we want it. And it doesn't also, it almost does a pin drop. Even if it's a scramble, which these companies use, it kind of does a pin drop, and you can see, I can pull open the map and kind of tell that in a town of Bolivar, how many they have. And it might only be off by literally 10 yards. It's not much, you could get out in a car and start driving and find it. So the company I use is called Key Data. They're very reputable. They're being used by a lot of destination marketing organizations. And again, I can provide you a couple screenshots of what they are giving me in a report. I just can't provide the whole report.
Can you tell us what a report costs?
How much it costs me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right now, $5,000 a year. Okay. That's what I'm paying. And honestly, our board, it was approved by our board. They have the the amount of information we're receiving is information we're not only receiving for our board to understand who our target market is. They even go into household, I can understand who we're marketing to by a lot of that information. So our board thought it was important, and I'll be honest with you guys, our delegation was looking for more numbers and more understanding into the short-term rental, to include the fact that the county commission, I got confirmation by finance, Michelle Gordon the other day, that the county will be separating out those receipts from all of these short-term rentals. What they receive in the county as far as a check, that'll be separated out. So at the end of the year, they can actually have a better idea of what that collection looks like too. Because keep in mind, I only get one check from the county, one check from the municipalities each.
And you do not know where those things came from as far as individual properties?
No, and you can look, and I know Nate's on this call and he's heard a lot about it too, I'm sure, but you can look around the country. That is an argument that Airbnb specifically is taking the lead on. They will not divulge their host, any private information, where they're located, names, contacts, any of that. And that's been in litigation across the country. And I don't see West Virginia ever having a shot at getting that anytime soon.
So I did a quick perusal of the Airbnb website and their bylaws under which they're governed. And I believe I found a section of the Airbnb where they said that they must comply with any requests by local government that requires permitting. And that they would give us information that we would need to make sure that they would be compliant with our permitting laws. Is that true, Nathan, or Ned? Is that something I'm misreading? I can give you the section that I found in the bylaws. I believe Verbo has the same type of bylaw.
I would hope to leave that to Nathan. Yeah, there he goes.
Yeah, well, that, I would need to look at that bylaw, but I'm just saying that's their internal rules. That's not a law. So however,
Okay,
you
so
could,
that's their internal rules. So if Jefferson County Tourism asked them to provide them with a list of their short-term rentals through Airbnb or through Verbo, they would comply with that? Do we know?
they might, I don't know. You would have to ask them and see what they said.
Okay.
And then if they didn't comply, you could, possibly take some further action to compel them to comply with their own rules. But it could be a request that could be
Right.
made pursuant to their bylaw.
Correct.
Would the request be better coming from the health department than it would be coming from Annette, since we are a quote government agency where she really is not?
Right.
Yeah, because Board of Health is more of a regulating body than the tourism is, right?
I mean, if it's a regulation related to the Board of Health's functions, then I would say, yeah, it could come from us. But
I agree with you.
the question would be, is it related to the Board of Health's functions?
Yeah,
So you would have to answer that.
Yeah,
there's a
Miss Gavin,
Yes.
you had told Gillian that you thought there was at least 200 units in the county. Do you have any data that gives you an idea how many units the county can support? Is there going to be a demand to 1,000, 800? Where do you think Airbnb's capped out at?
What was the last, what numbers are we looking for?
What volume of demand do you think Airbnb's can support? So there's 200 units. How many can we see in a couple of years?
What would be the market saturation point?
Wow, the short-term rentals is a trend. If we go historically back to, like I said, when we all started having this conversation, I specifically remember sitting in, at that time, Senator Trump's office talking about other things, alcohol regulations, as we always are. and looking up the number of Airbnbs in the county, and our number in the county back 4 and 5 years ago was only 65, 70. That's how much it's grown in that period of time. And I'll be honest with you guys, COVID probably just lit a fire under that. I mean, people were just deciding, I mean, I know that there's data out there to talk about the increase in short-term rentals because of COVID. I look for the trend to go higher and higher. I can tell you that I can give you numbers of what last year was versus this year in revenue for a certain amount of time. I don't know if you could take that number and see that percentage increase and actually determine and forecast or budget that would be the same amount of increase. We're still looking at a COVID year versus a year we're trying to get back to normal. So I don't think it equates to an exact percentage increase, but I do think that the number, if it's really 202 that I can verify, I would imagine, as I think all of you living in our county go, that number is only going to go up. I know there are other hotels talking about coming in. I know that they're still looking at repurposing the Clarion and maybe reopening it as a hotel. Still, with all that being said, I don't see these numbers going down. I only see them going up.
Well, obviously the growth with the short-term rentals is directly almost that you can verify equal to what you have lost in the last couple years with the 2 hotels not being up as well. So it's almost equal.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, one of the metrics that we use for our CVB and most DMOs use for their organizations is a hotel motel collection, right? Obviously, it's the one thing we can see. And our best year, we've been trending up every year since I've been here, since 2013. We've been trending up a percentage each year. 2019, it hit the highest amount that we had seen in hotel motel collection. And again, I represent the Shepherdstown, Harpers Ferry, Bolivar, and Charlestown, as well as any lodging in the county. That number got to a peak in 2019. And then we started dropping, of course, in 20 and 21. This year, so far this year, for the first 5 months versus the 5 months for the past 3 years, to include 19, we've already blown out 20 and 21, and we're already almost 10% ahead of 19. And that's with the 2 hotels being closed. So as Ann says, we had those hotels in 19. We don't this year, and we're already making up for it, plus some.
Thank you very much.
So Annette, how would you feel about the fact that the health department was permitting these establishments as far as your promotions would go within the Visitors Bureau? Do you think that would help?
Well, I can't speak for the whole organization. The board has not taken a stand on permitting. Obviously, if we start to talk a fairness issue, as we always have been, whether we were saying these short-term rentals should be on the same level playing field as other hotels, right, in the fairness side of it. If you are requiring Airbnbs or these short-term rentals to have a permit, it only makes sense that everyone should be permitted. Obviously, it shouldn't just be, in my personal opinion and not the board's opinion, it shouldn't just be the ones who have been good enough to come out of the shadows and say, hey, we are using this property. I do know there have been some very good, there's a lot of good work that Pocahontas County did, working directly with their assessor's office, with their DMO like me and some others to find all of the short-term rentals, send them a letter and say, hey, you know, we realize that you are operating, and here's the state code that tells you what is considered lodging, and here are the things you should be doing. And I always have said that education is the biggest part of it, to be able to find them and actually bring them into the fold. It worked really well for Pocahontas County. They got very little pushback. And I'm going to go again with the fact that I just think people didn't know, right? I don't want to say it was all intentional. Sure, there are some people that probably would rather not come out of that, you know, and say, I'm operating this. But I think that's very small. I really do. I think a letter, you know, when Pete Doherty was the sheriff, I'd asked Pete, this is how it started. Hey, Pete, can we start sending letters if we identify who has a short-term rental? And you remember, guys, if you look at the state code, and I know Nate will verify this, I am not part of the enforcement arm in any ways on this. It's the sheriff of the county and the chief of police. They are the ones that are the treasurers and have the enforcement ability. And I that's not the role I want to play. However, if we can say to them, here's the state code, here's some things that you should be doing, here's some things you could be doing. And by the way, give Annette's information out to them, I can promote them. Because as of now, unless I know about you, like when Ann Smith starts a short-term rental, she sends me an email or text and says, hey, I have this cool short-term rental. Will you let your staff know? Right? And then we're all on the same team, right? So that to me is huge. I've made this comment in a committee meeting before, and I'll make this comment again. The reason you're able to have a short-term rental in Jefferson County right now is because of who we are. We are that destination that people want to travel to, and we've been marketing it for a long time, right? So you're not going to have short-term rentals in areas that aren't tourist destinations. And to continue that, I want to promote you. I want to talk about the diversity. So everybody wins then, I think.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I know I talk a lot, so sorry I went on and on, but I could talk about it all day, but thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, I know everybody probably there has my contact information, but I can easily be reached and be happy to share anything else with you, and come by and see us at our beautiful Welcome Center in Harpers Ferry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Annette, I don't know what the board feels about this, but if they're going to discuss this, it would probably be really helpful if you could hang on for a few minutes.
Okay.
I don't know what your schedule is, but that's up to the board, of course. But they may have a question that
Sure.
You are familiar with. I don't know.
All right, I'm happy to hang on.
So the discussion is where to set short-term rental fees as well as
Say that the total is like $185.
I can't hear you.
So you're
It's okay.
I think David has a really pertinent question.
So I'll be clear with everybody here at the board, and I'll be clear with my position and states on it. I'm absolutely pro-business or pro-tourism. But I agree with Annette, the Airbnbs need to register themselves. We don't need to be punitive for attempting to
David, can you speak up a little bit? We can hardly hear you.
I'm speaking pretty loud.
Okay, well, speak louder.
I'll yell at you. My opinion, and I'm yelling, is that we should be pro-business. We should absolutely not be punitive and try to run any Airbnbs away. We want to encourage them to register, and we want to encourage there to be more Airbnbs so we can accommodate the tourism industry. I would hate to hear that somebody tried to come to our town this Saturday and couldn't find a place to stay and decided to go to a different town. I would find that to be heartbreaking. So my opinion is I'd like to know from Gillian what it really cost us to approve the permit. I don't want to lose money, but I don't want to make any money on Airbnb.
Well, the thing is that we are an oversight board with regard to these enterprises. And I couldn't agree with you more. The Airbnbs need to be brought into the fold. However, but without interfering, being intrusive into the way people do business. But I was really quite moved by this letter from the person who owns a bed and breakfast in Harper's Ferry in terms of the fees. So I don't think there's any question that an Airbnb needs to be classified somehow and brought into the fold, or just set everybody else free, one or the other. So the thing is the fees. Now I see that the bed and breakfast, for example, is $60, right? Because they're tiny, right? And then, but yet they are still classified as a motel, aren't they? Or are
Bed and breakfasts are not classified as hotels.
That's a separate-
Airbnb are classified as hotels.
Gotcha. All right, so
Reclassified, yes.
it seems to me that the whole key is setting a fair fee schedule, right?
And we should call them short-term rentals, not Airbnbs, because that's just the site.
Correct.
Short-term rentals are classified as motels. So the argument or the discussion that we're supposed to be having is about whether or not we would like to reduce the fees that we're currently charging for short-term rentals.
Right. Well,
And David asked about staff time that's spent on it. We spent about 2 hours on a plan review, whatever time is spent processing the application with Patty. And the sanitarian spent about 2 hours going over the plans for that establishment, the plan review, and making sure everything is right. And then they have to do an opening inspection, and then there will be routine inspections as well.
all right, so,
Where
so,
4 days.
4 or 5.
Okay.
yeah, I wasn't finished. The key is the fees and what's fair. And I'm looking at the schedule here, and if you, for a food permit, if you got 0 to 20 seats, you pay a certain fee, but if you get 1 seat more, your fee doubles. So nobody's ever going to have a 21 seat establishment because, so those kinds of schedules of fees to me just seem to be arbitrary and some ways punitive, and deciding, either you're going to have a 20-seater or a 50-seater or an 80-seater when it might have been more beneficial to you to have a 25-seater. So it looks like, based on these schedules of fees, that you're looking at $5 a seat or $5 a room or $6, right? So if you schedule the fees that way, with more of a slide to them instead of like this, it seems like we could get this done. And that way, an Airbnb that's only got 1 room, you pay $5 and you just get on your way, right, for the permit. And
These fees are set by the state. They're not fees that we've arbitrarily come up with. They're set by the state. And if we change the fee for something like your bed and breakfast, they not only pay the $60 fee for the lodging facility, they also pay $125 for a food establishment
Right,
fee,
that-
which is, I know what you're discussing.
Yeah.
However, if we're talking about bed and breakfast and the limited amount they serve, there's also like mobile food trucks that don't serve a lot in the county and things like that. So if you're talking about that, you're going to create issues with the fees that we're charging other facilities to. I don't think we should make any changes to food establishment fees for anybody. These have been set by the state. They're the same fees that people pay across the board. The food, they apply to concession stands that don't serve that much food too, and don't have any seating. So it's just something that it's not arbitrary. They're set by the state, and it's what pretty much every other county in the state charges As long as they're going with the state's maximum fees that you can set, which is what we have done. And I'd like to remind the board that most of our revenue that we get in this office comes from the environmental health fees.
Well, they are arbitrary if they're set by the state. So.
Nathan, it's an idea, it's probably a terrible idea, but I want to go by you to see if it can help the smaller businesses. Senator Rucker passed a bill, what do I say, 2 years ago, that we can sell West Virginia resident can sell product from their kitchen. And it's have to be labeled as a kitchen, a homemade cottages law, yes. Can the Airbnb use that law and bypass the health department inspection, food inspection, basically stay on their own with that?
And I'll tell you why. The cottage food law only applies to like baked goods that are not potentially hazardous, that don't require refrigeration or time control for safety. Bed and breakfasts are not serving that type of food. So if they only want to serve baked goods, they could potentially do that.
If they only do breakfast.
No, like baked goods, not only breakfast. Like if they're doing sausage, biscuits, and gravy, or cooking eggs and bacon, that's not non-potentially hazardous food. It is potentially hazardous, and they are required to be permitted.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, I would have to review it, but it based on what Gillian said, that sounds reasonable to me, having not reviewed that particular law. I would be happy to look at it, but
yeah, would you please do that?
Sure.
I think it's quite
So, Gillian, when you say that the food permit fees, right, they're set by the state, is the same go for the hotel motel fees too?
Yes.
All of these. I think sometimes we're missing the point here of the reasons that these businesses are permitted. And coming from one that's been in this business for a very, very long time and new to the Airbnb or the short-term rental platform, is these inspections are very valuable in protecting the public. There's a reason that restaurants are inspected. And a lot of it is not simply because the owner, like me, doesn't know what the rules should be, but we all have employees that are there. And sometimes it's nothing more than just educating them or bringing them back up to par, that the paper towels have to be at the hand sink and the soap dispenser full and minor things like that. And as far as the temps go in refrigeration. When I had my short-term rental inspected, after we had done a very extensive remodeling job with a totally new bathroom, new roof, vaulted ceiling over the bathroom, the inspection comes back with no hot water, or the water wasn't warm enough to be washing your hands in the bathroom sink, which we're finding totally impossible because the hot water tank was literally in a closet, probably no more than 8 feet away from where this sink was. And it's fine in the shower and fine in the kitchen. Why is it not there? Well, come to find out, the water valve, and it had a mixing valve where the faucet was not turned on under the sink. So, heck, we hadn't caught it. Obviously our plumber hadn't caught it, and the health department catches it. So there's a lot of little things with education that get picked up along the way with having these inspections done. And coming from the professional side, I think it's important that all of them sort of have that same ability to be educated and comply. How many of them could be doing those things?
we want it to be safe for everybody.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is that, whereas I understand that the purpose of these regulations are to protect the public, we also need to understand that a business is going to do its very best to make sure that it doesn't make its patrons sick, because if it does, it goes out of business. So there's a certain amount of, how should I say, the regulations, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be there, But really, it's up to the businesses, and they're going to be doing, most businesses, almost all, are not going to be following the regulations because of their regulations. They can be following them because they want to please their customers and make sure that they serve them.
So Gillian, if we talk about if the bed and breakfast serve continental breakfast, let's say they goes and muffins in the morning, but if they serve milk, like in the bed of the lady stated, then they have to pay a permit fee. Is that correct? If they have milk?
So anything
Can we
that requires
bypass them?
refrigeration. No, that's not, it's in state rules. We can't bypass what they're required to be permitted for. The only discussion we're supposed to be having is about the fees. That's what was on the agenda. We cannot change the state rules that require permits.
So
But
what do you mean by
here,
the fees?
fees
Because
also set by the state, so.
you already
there's
said
nothing
that we
much we
can't
can do.
change the fees.
The fees are, no, I didn't say that. So I even told you guys last
Roll back
month
the tape.
when we were here, that's not what I said.
But
What did you say?
So-
It's our district billing, we can't create or abolish fees, we just set the amount of the fees, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I
we
thought
can't.
you said that we can't set the amount. That
No,
those amounts are set by the state.
But-
These are
Those
set
are
by
the
the
max,
state.
the state set the max.
Yes, and we have
Oh.
adopted
Well, then I
these fees. We have
misunderstood what you
gone
said.
through the entire process to adopt all these fees. With our discussion today was supposed to be about whether or not we want to consider reducing the fee for short-term rentals. That was what the discussion was supposed to be about today. You
And
can't
when
do that.
When
You
I said
can't-
that, if you do it on a per seat or per room basis, then it becomes more equitable.
But if you're talking about short-term rentals, that is one thing. But you were talking about food establishments, and if you get into that, it's affecting so many things in this county and a lot of revenue. So.
Well,
that's-
can we do
Let's
an
go back
impact?
to where we were supposed to be talking about this. And I think the discussion needs to be the $125 fee. I would like to advocate that we try to get more establishments permitted in this county, since we only have, correct me, Gillian, if I'm wrong, somewhere in the 20 range of these 200 that we know that exist that are permitted. And trying to get them permitted and to the point that they are doing what needs to be done as far as keeping the public safe, that we waive any of these application fees for 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, or whatever number that you all think is logical, and try to get as many of them on board voluntarily, and not try to really start tracking people down and hoping that they would do this voluntarily.
Well, I did waive the plan review fees because we
Right.
also charge $125 for plan review fees. So I waived those through this month for any Airbnbs that were applying. So they only had to pay the permit fee, not the plan review fee.
So I don't think any of us really need to argue. This is quite simple. If I'm hearing everyone is looking for an angle to bring this thing down. So let's just start working on a rationale to bring it down.
Well, I would like to know what the impact on revenue would be if you adopt a more graduated schedule.
And I agree with you. So here's what I've been doing. My first answer was, what's it cost Gillian to produce the permit? So we stood here and analyzed, the total cost is probably $90.
Well, even more, well, we already have a revenue stream. What I'd like to know is if we modify, we already have a revenue stream. I would like to know if we modify the fee schedule in certain ways, what the impact would be on the revenue that comes in, the aggregate.
So I've been thinking about this for a couple months now. If based upon what Annette told us, that it's anywhere from the 200 to 300 range on short-term rentals. If we went with what the state is asking us to do, which is to require a inspection fee. And then
The plan.
a plan, I'm
review
sorry,
fee is something that
plan
we
review fee,
eventually set.
a one-time plan review fee, one-time plan review fee for $125 and an annual permit for $125.
Hold on, it says annual permit for 125. And then food permit.
No, the plan review, because
Plan
short-term rentals do not serve food, but they
Right,
should be
well,
serving food.
Plan
Well-
reviews, well, they can, so 120.
If they do, then they're, yeah.
So what's that fee?
It's 125 for the plan review.
All right, what's the
And
food fee?
then, what's that?
What's the food fee?
Well,
That would be.
Short-term rent, yeah.
One
So,
twenty-five.
Okay, if they're serving food, and then the short-term rentals, 125, right?
correct.
but like every government action, right, there are unintended consequences.
Of course.
So then, just looking ahead to see what impact this is going to have on the bed and breakfast industry.
Absolutely.
Because no bed and breakfast is going to stay in business as a bed and breakfast. They'll all convert to short-term rentals, and that would be the end of tradition. So,
As anybody who's studied economics would
Right,
understands that one of the unintended consequences of charging too much to permit these short-term rentals
or the bed and breakfast.
is that you will reduce the number of available bed and breakfast or
And then-
short-term rentals in the county, which is something we're not aiming to do.
Right.
So that's one thing. If you
Price
reduce it
affects
to a
demand.
point to where you then incentivize current people who are running traditional bed and breakfasts to become Airbnbs, that also has an effect.
Right.
So you have to decide, that's why this is so
But the
important. That's why
market-
there's so many moving parts here.
Yeah.
And I think another thing you're asking is what is the revenue cost to the health department?
Right.
So, because that's where I come from.
Exactly.
We're
What
not
the
in
impact, right.
So the revenue
impact on
cost,
revenue.
to the health department, quick estimate would be about $50,000 in the first year. That's something, that's our potential revenue. And then on a continuing basis, anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 a year in annual revenue.
Based on.
Based upon the numbers that the net gave us and the permit fee, the current max state set permit fees.
So there would be an increase.
We would have an increase of about 50 for a one-off, because all of the ones that are around 200 of them aren't currently
But then
permitted.
if.
But then
if
you're
it's-
talking about
If it's an increase of $25,000 to $30,000.
on an
maybe
ongoing
we could
basis.
look at making the other fees more graduated, and the blend of the revenues coming from all of this might work out to be neutral or even still positive.
Correct.
But remember also that you're going to have a tremendous increase in the staff hours that are needed to permit these things. I mean, I don't think that $25,000 is going to make any difference there. I mean, it will cost the health department more than that to do these inspections, won't it, Gillian?
Yes,
In
and
time.
we're also going to have to put a lot of staff time into,
Mhm.
we are going to have to find the Airbnbs that are not currently permitted and send them letters. That's basically what our plan has been. That's going to take quite a few staff hours, just getting.
Would one of the ways of trying to reach these things, trying to put it maybe on the website and the Facebook page and try to reach these people through a lot of social media and try to get them to do it voluntarily before you have to start sending letters? I hate for us to have to get to that point. I would like to see as many of them as possible come up voluntarily. And I think if they were aware of it, probably a lot would.
Especially
That's
like-
why-
And I
The way
don't want
the
to,
plan-
I don't want to put Annette on the spot, but maybe she would have any ideas about that, and which is a good idea to try to get people to voluntarily approach you, because as I think from Annette's perspective is not the fees, but that they can actively market these B&Bs to people, which would help them and probably make them a lot more money than paying a fee. And if I could, I think it would be a great question if you had any further ideas on that.
Dr.
I mean, absolutely, I agree. I think that I really do feel that it's an educational piece of it that we're missing. And we're not recreating the wheel here. As I said, I know Pocahontas County already did some stuff. I don't know on the health department side of it But I know on a countywide level, there has been a push to just have them all come into the fold without it being, without any of us looking like we're trying to generate revenue. We're trying to, again, make sure by identifying them, we're making sure that they also get the reward of having a short-term rental. So I of course, I understand the manpower it would take. I know a lot of people talk about, you can go on the website and you could just start yourself and click on and try to find where all these guys are. But I caution all of us, because, and I think that's what we're all saying, is there's nothing adversarial here. I don't want to come from a point of being an adversarial, component to this, because they are our partners. For me, they are my partners in tourism, and for you, they are community, that people in our community are doing this. So my opinion, I just recommend that we tread lightly on this, because with also being mindful of what we're doing to set a precedent, in this particular situation.
Yeah, and my apology, board members. I just thought, well, we have her here. She's maybe one who understands a lot of the effects more than certainly than I do and some others. So my apology for jumping in there.
So Ms. Gavin, I have a question. Would the Visitors Bureau commit or offer that you would promote the Airbnbs registered with the health department more prominently once not?
Yeah, I mean, currently, before the law passed, we'd already been receiving requests from people who had short-term rentals. And as they sent them in to me, as they were identified, I placed them in our directory on our website as under lodging. And you will see, even from, there was the important thing back then. Here are the people that have gone out of their way to make sure they were charging, collecting, and remitting, because they had a great accountant who said, hey, this is state code, you should probably be doing this. So you will see a list of a handful already on my website that are just people who have come out and said, yep, we're doing the right thing, we're registered, we're this and that. And I've been promoting them on our website. Now, in the future, obviously, I'm not going to be able to list everyone, but we're redoing our website, and I'm directing them, like a lot of DMOs, to all of the links that have short-term rental, like all the marketplace facilitators. So there's a data collection within the link that I'm providing. So in essence, saying, yeah, we are promoting them right along with our hotels.
Okay. Well, my opinion for discussion is that we reduce the fees, which we get inside. If anybody that registers with us, we make sure that we pass that on to Annette, and that we help them with some advertising tourism. So it's not an adverse thing, it's a positive.
Well, I agree with you. It's just that we need to find the right formula.
Well, I don't think it's that hard, Elliot. So
I didn't say it was.
no, I didn't say you did either. So I think it costs $90 for our staff to do it. And I think we can promote for a time period that we waive the plan review fee to encourage people to register. And you're already doing that.
Can we do it 1 year instead of a month? Was that a big impact on revenue?
Yes, that is a large impact on revenue. I also don't think it incentivizes anybody to do anything quickly. A year out.
Giving anybody.
I'd also like to hear what Dr. Reedy has to say.
Yeah. So I have a different perspective. First, this is a completely different discussion than talking about food service activities of the health department. So bed and breakfast becomes an entirely different matter than short-term rentals, because food safety is real. This we are doing because we have been told the health department will do this for short-term rentals, as opposed to fire marshal doing it or a building inspector doing it, who could find plumbing issues. So this is a little less of a public health issue than some other things such as restaurant inspection. For restaurant inspection, Gillian, correct me, as I'm sure you will, if I'm wrong, a 20-seat restaurant has far less kitchen and other requirements than a 40-seat restaurant. So the inspection becomes much more, the issues are different. I would guess a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, or excuse me, Airbnb, short-term rental, doesn't take much more time than a 1-bedroom.
It's more like a home kitchen, isn't it?
So that it's pretty much the same thing, you just have more.
Yeah, but from a medical stance and food stance, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, this is how my brain thinks about it. If we're at a restaurant and they have a bad batch of soup that's making themselves sick, and a table, they've got 20 tables and they're turned every 45 minutes, and there's 4 people at the table, that bad batch of soup can affect 500 people in an afternoon, rather than food in an Airbnb that 3 people are staying in. There's not going to be any more than 3 people affected. So the amount of people affected by a bad inspection is drastic.
Well, an Airbnb is, they're not serving food. They're not preparing and serving. food.
Exactly. Everyone I've stayed in brings it in.
So there is not as much public health knowledge needed to conduct inspection, but inspecting a big restaurant, there's lots of issues. And the bigger the restaurant, the more nooks and crannies. But so that's one of the reasons for the difference in fees. So the Airbnb, whether it's a 1-bedroom or a 5-bedroom, I have no idea what the business costs are and the charges and all that. But from our standpoint, it wouldn't be any more or less expensive. So our reason for doing this is because we are required to do it by the state Bureau of Public Health, HHR. And we just don't want to be either losing money, or more important to me is we don't want to be diverting our staff from doing restaurant and septic inspections, which is our bigger concern, about preventing illness. Not that public safety in housing is unimportant, but I don't think that's our main focus. The question is whether, how much the health departments need to be the ones doing this or someone else, because each of these sanitarians who's doing this inspection has lots of other training for other things. So that's just a little different perspective on it.
So I'm just going to throw this out there. And I understand where you're coming from, absolutely, I agree with you. So why don't we consider reclassifying, instead of it saying hotel, motel, how about we do hotel, motel in our residential structure? Because that's what Airbnbs are.
Or just hotel, it's a hotel, motel, yeah, I guess,
In a
yeah,
residential.
I think I see what you're trying to say there.
The definition for motel in the general sanitation regulations, which are the regulations that we're enforcing for permitting them, says every building constructed, designed, maintained, offered, or used to furnish lodging to automobile transient guests or the traveling public. The term motel includes auto courts, motor courts, auto lodges, motor lodges, tourist cabins, tourist cottages, and tourist courts.
So
That's how the state has, that's the definition the state puts them under as far as meeting this code. So for the fees, I mean, it's not going to affect what definition they fall under in this code for the regulations. For the fees, you can call it, like you can call it short-term rental if you want, instead of motel in a residential structure.
Right.
So however you want to clarify.
Define an STR simply as without using the word Airbnb, a residential.
It's a residential dwelling or transient.
And
individuals.
right now, I just want to make sure that you understand that we're not voting to change the fee today. We would be voting to put it up for public comment.
Right.
I would make a suggestion that it's $90 without food and $115 with food.
So explain how a short-term rental does and what they're allowed to do.
So it's a short-term rental, most of them are not serving food at all. So
Right, I
they're
think that
just
was-
they're not serving food. If they are serving food, then
They're really
they're,
a bed and breakfast.
yes, well, except if somebody's not living on site, then, right.
But I think
So-
what we need to do is not put the bed and breakfast at a competitive disadvantage to the STR. So how do we do that?
Well, the bed and breakfast is getting charged 60, right?
Yes.
But they're also
And then-
getting charged 125 for the food, even though they've only got maybe a couple for the weekend, and they've got to pay 100. In fact, you read this letter, right, from,
Okay, so then that's easy. Let's make the short-term rentals should be in line with the bed and breakfast for $60 fee. If they choose to serve food, they should pay the same as bed and breakfast. Makes
Or
sense.
I would say, I would go the other way with it. I would say that the Airbnb be charged a certain, whatever we want to charge for the SDRs, but we need to give some relief, I think, to the bed and breakfast that are at a competitive disadvantage, because they're not restaurants. They're being charged as if they were a 20-seat restaurant.
How many?
I think we're still on the wrong page here of what we're being asked to achieve. If we try to change fees, we have to take that to the county commission and they would have to vote on it for there to be any change of fees. I think what we're being asked today is, could we possibly waive this fee for the original application and try to get some of these businesses to comply voluntarily with the fee being the same. The fee is not that far out of line, and I would guess that 99% of these businesses that are on a short-term rental platform are charging more than $125 per day for any of those visits. So in reality, that permit fee is one night's lodging.
But again, what I said before is that we need to weigh the actions that we take here on how they're going to affect other participants in this industry, like bed and breakfast. So that is very much on the table, I think.
But the bed and breakfast platform has been this way for many, many, many years. None of that has changed. What has changed in the last few years is a real influx of lots of Airbnbs. And
Yeah, and that industry has sprung up to get around the bed and breakfast problem.
no, I don't think that's the reason. I think that it's a way that lots of people have found, to make extra money while they have guests in their home. And in my case, I've had rentals for years and decided that I didn't really want to deal with the full-time rental and decided that I would give this a try. And I must say that and I'm only a year into this now, the income is probably double what I was actually renting that house for as just a single family resident. So what I think we've probably taken a lot out of the grid are a lot of the rentals like mine that were being rented as a house, and you decided to take it on as a short-term rental. And I think that's true with a lot of them in Harpers Ferry. They were actually single family houses.
But and that's exactly what the bed and breakfast has always been. There's been a lot of people that live in their bed and breakfast and then rent the rest of the house out to bed and breakfast customers.
Most of these short-term rentals do not have somebody there. Only a very few.
But for clarity, Airbnbs, in my opinion, are modern bed and breakfast business platform. They're not that much different than a bed and breakfast because they operate out of a residential dwelling.
Except that they don't serve food because they're trying to avoid that $125 fee.
Well, in most cases, Airbnb is the platform where you could have a room in your home that you rented, or it could be a freestanding house. VRBO is only a house where there would be no other guest in that house except the people that are renting it. And I think that it is that way on booking.com as well. We're listed on all three of those, but VRBO is only a whole house. It is not renting that with any other guest. The big difference in a bed and breakfast is there could be, one family in one room, another family in another room. On the Airbnb platform, you probably will not have that as well. It's all whoever is in that reservation for that particular house, even though there may be more than one room, would all be on one reservation. Where where a B&B would have multiple guests.
So why don't we put it out there, we make the fees the same as Airbnb and bed and breakfast?
Well, the thing is though, well, except that, the Airbnb, the difference is the food permit. So you're saying waive the food permit?
Well, so the bed and breakfast is charged 60, are they getting charged a food permit separate of that too?
Yeah.
So they're paying 185 total.
Yeah,
Right, so I'm saying that.
so
Airbnb-
say 65 for the bed breakfast, pay $60 for the hotel, for the rental, part of it, and then $65 for the food permit. So
No,
it's the same as-
I'm
as
saying
Airbnb.
I'm saying the Airbnb, I don't think the Airbnb's food really matters. I don't think it's part of the business
No,
model.
it's not. That's what I'm saying. So if you want to make it the same, then it would be the $60 for that we currently charge the bed and breakfast, plus instead of $125 food fee, it's $65 food fee, and then they have their own variety.
We
I think they charge $125.
So if we reduce this fee, then we're taking on an additional expense here. If your estimate is that it costs $90 to do this inspection, but yet we're only going to charge them 60.
Then
Right.
it becomes the same as an Airbnb. Right. So if you can charge. them-
Yeah, I mean, we are in the position that we need to be at least generating income or being revenue equal. We certainly do not need to be taking on something that we're going to lose money on starting out.
Yeah, I can see where Elliot is coming from. It makes sense to me, what he is saying. Because the problem with reducing Airbnb or short-term rental fees to $60, like the bed and breakfast is $60, is we're going to lose some of our bed and breakfast. They're just gonna say, I'm not serving food anymore. And if they don't serve food and it's their primary residence, they actually don't need to be permitted. And we've already lost a couple that way. So that there's no fee. So I really, I think what Elliot is saying actually makes more sense to require a separate food establishment fee just for bed and breakfast. That would mean that they're paying the same amount as short-term rentals. So they'd be paying $125 in total for both of their permits, like a $65 food establishment fee. And then they're paying the exact same amount as short-term rentals where it's not the primary residence of the owner.
I think that's a good idea as well. That puts everybody on the same playing field.
And I think if you read Lynn Petriconis's letter, well, maybe I'm referring to her personal email to me, was that she serves one meal a day to a very small population. And she's paying $125 food service permit
Right.
fee, which is in line to someone who had some of the small diners in the area. And so she feels that that's an unfair burden to her business. So I can see exactly where you're coming from. So what you're thinking is you leave the Airbnb permit fee at $125 and move the traditional B&B in line to that by giving them a $60 permitting fee and a $65 B&B food establishment permit. B&B on it. And that's something we've already actually talked about, though, because they're only serving that one meal. And typically it's only on weekends.
They might even move some of the SDRs and decide to become.
Regular B&Bs.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. So,
You never know.
but those are things we have to discuss. And obviously we have one of our county commissioners right here, and he's thinking about it too from his perspective. So it's there's a lot of moving parts here. It's public comment, and and I know Annette knows that there will be people who are part of the greater B&B industry that will have something to say about this. The traditional B&B industry will have something to say about this.
Just enter the larger cost of personnel and food is greater by far over the course of the year than the cost of the property.
Yes.
Especially if you're saving $60.
And the food handling and all that. But
This would not affect those who are
short-term rentals that are not.
So what action do we actually need to take today? If we're going to change any of this, we have to put it out for public comment?
That's the action that you're taking today, is whether or not you want to put a fee change out for public comment.
My question,
And I'm sorry, but what you said about it having to be approved by the county commission, it's not a rule. I've discussed the fee thing with the people, other individuals before, and that's not something that the county commission needs to approve.
Not, okay.
Yes.
So then I make a motion that the Airbnb fee be the same as the small motel fee, and that the bed and breakfast fees are adjusted to $60 permitting fee for the,
Well, that's the same, so the only thing you would be adjusting is the.
and the $65 exactly for the food for a bed and breakfast.
So the motion is to put it in public, from public comment,
Right.
on our website.
I would like second, then not charge the plan review fee for a period of 6 months.
Oh, okay, we can
I
add
don't
that.
think that needs to be, that doesn't need to be out for public comment. That's just something that we can choose to do. We can waive
I'll
that
make
fee
a
if we
second.
choose.
Yeah.
It's not a permit fee, it's a service, fee, a fee for service.
All right, so motion's presented, is there a second?
Can you repeat it again?
That we charge the Airbnbs the minimum, as per a motel fee, and that we adjust the bed and breakfast food permitting fee from 125 to 65.
Okay,
Can I ask
This-
Nathan just
Yeah, but
technical clarification?
right.
Airbnb is a brand name. Should we be saying
Yes.
short-term rental?
Yes, you're right.
So our motion is to charge short-term rental as much as the bed and breakfast fee, which is $60.
No, the motion is that the that the short-term rentals be charged as a motel.
Well, yeah, so that's
So
the
that's
same, so
six.
there's no reason to even make a motion on that.
So the
So the
motion is to
motion-
reduce,
What I have is that you made a motion to adjust the B&B food establishment fee from $125 to $65 and put that out for public comment.
okay,
that's it.
all right. Second,
And then the Airbnb is clarified as short-term.
right, short-term.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
And we didn't hear you.
I'm
Motion
not hearing you very well either. The video, audio is not very good today.
Okay, I try to speak louder. Is that better?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we waive the plan review fee for the next 6 months. And that after
Plan
such,
review fee
for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
And we waive it for the next 6 months, and then after the 6 months, the fee is reduced to $65.
Oh, that's interesting. Any discussion? Good.
I don't think we should reduce the fee or think about that at this time. I think we need to focus on trying to get as many of these people to comply as possible and then address that at that point in time. It may need to happen, but right now we're at a renewal year on July 1 coming up. And let's see how many of them we can get on board by reducing the permit fee or the application fee and see what happens. And then make a judgment call much further down the road.
So Julia, are you okay with waiving the fee for 6 months? And Gino, in terms of operation?
We
I
discussed that.
think Gilead's been waiving the fee, haven't you?
Yeah, but I
I
just want to know if she's okay with extending it for another 6 months.
So let's make sure we use the right terms here. This is plan review fee. Correct?
Right.
It's $125 for short-term rentals. Plan review fee for short-term rentals is $125.
And that's the.
That's an initial
plan
fee
review
only.
fee that we charge anybody,
Right.
like mobile food trucks, everything. They have the food establishment plan review fees also, like one-time revenue source, and it does require work. We do have to review all plan reviews. These take less time maybe than some other plan reviews to review, so I could see a possible reduction in the fee, but I don't have any issue with waiving the fee for a period of time. So
What is your opinion?
I would choose less time because I think what we're really trying to do is get everybody into compliance with the regulations, because we have had complaints from the many that were at the plan review commission or heard about what was going on with short-term rentals there, and they brought me into it to discuss what our requirements are. That's when I was letting everybody know that short-term rentals that are not the primary residence of the owner are required to be permitted through our office. So I think most people in the county are aware of it already. I don't think it's to the point now where people aren't aware that they're supposed to be permitted. So I think, and not that we're trying to close anybody or anything like that, but we are just trying to get people on board. And like my suggestion would have been 3 months instead of 6 months to waive the fee, but
Isn't that fit better into your schedule, 6 months?
well, their permits run a little different, I believe.
Then would you feel more comfortable if we made the resolution for 3 months and then to review it after 3 months to see if we want to extend it another 3 months? Is that better?
Yeah.
Or what about something gradual to encourage them? So like 3 months free, 3 to 6 months, half price. After 6,
Actually, if you make it just 3 months from now and then we review it in the future, then it might incentivize people to come on in and go.
I agree with that. I think we need, if Gillian thinks 3 months, let's do 3 months. And we'll review this at the end of that time and see how many we have been able to get permitted.
And just for my understanding, they will then, if you accept their claim, then they owe money for the permit fee. And then the yearly would be when? A year later? Or
I'm
July
trying,
1st?
I think their permits are I'd have to ask Patty to be sure, but I think they're the fiscal year permits, not the calendar year permits, but I'm not positive. So we have calendar year and
So
fiscal
when
year,
it's
so
due,
they
the
do
yearly
their,
fee will be
yes.
yearly, not a
Yes.
year.
No. Yeah, so, and their permit fees are prorated, so if but I believe that they're fiscal year permits, so they all start on July 1, so. But they are, if you're, like they're prorated quarterly, so.
But they're getting a deal. but not having-
Heck yeah.
So then,
Half price.
Which I've already been doing, and I want to make that clear, nobody who has applied so far has had to pay the plan review.
so then if there's no further discussion, I'll second the motion as amended.
With point of order, what agenda items authorizing?
Correct. So that was also the question.
For the last.
It was the
But
proposed
we're not even.
Airbnb fee change discussion action. Yes, exactly. So, but this is actually something that can be done by the environmental health manager. And she can be asked that by the board of health. I don't think there needs to be any. I don't even think there needs to be a motion. There just needs to be agreement among the board and among I think the executives here. And we go
So
from
we
there.
don't need to
Right.
vote on that.
But we definitely
Because
all
I've
agree that,
already done that, which is
Alright.
Julie's approval if I wanted to waive the fee for something.
yes,
So then this is just an employee board
you
conversation.
got it.
And she advises 3 months and we agree with that.
Yep. And I think it's a good idea to continue that for a few more months because I do think that's a great way to incentivize business owners to take advantage of essentially a half price getting onto the books.
The last question I had about it is this, I wanted to get into opinion. What about, this doesn't really address the future. So if somebody decides that they want to buy Airbnb tomorrow.
STR. In fact, I was just looking at new business here on the agenda, which proposed Airbnb fee.
Yep. I
Change
use
that
that
to STR.
as vernacular, like Kleenex is a tissue, but everybody says
Aspirin used to be
Kleenex.
a brand name, yes.
Would
Yeah.
you consider in the future waiving plan review fees if they submit prior to?
Way to promote it.
It's possible. I don't think we've done this for things like this where we found out, oh, we're supposed to be permitting them. To get people on board, we're waiving one of the fees, so that's something we can that way.
Who's on the line?
Because we're not trying to put anybody out.
It's probably set.
All right, you used to show that.
Right, and that's, and like after I found out about the Airbnb, yeah, so, okay, I was thinking that's.
Can you change that?
We're really running out of time. Can we move on?
Yes.
All right, we move to the agency activity report discussions, the health administrator report.
So you discussed all the things that I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right, health officer report, Dr. Beatty.
The PowerPoint maybe for me. So in the last, okay, going. So this will be primarily discussion about COVID. By the state map, this was last month. It looks pretty good. And next month, not much change. The state map is done differently. They calculate it differently and looks very good compared to the national map. The CDC and other places like New York Times and all sorts of others use next. So this is the national map of a month ago. You can see primarily New England had increased cases next. This is what it's like now. You can see West Virginia has their own 3 colors, and West Virginia has a lot next. Compared to the state map, if you calculate it differently, it doesn't look quite as cheerful. So there is indeed more COVID, and we know that from this discussion. I'm sure you've all heard from people we know who have had it. Excuse me, is that date right?
2022.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we didn't have that much back then. Yeah, I'll change that. Yes. But, so next, now these are different. Those were different metrics than 6 months ago, where the red ones were even more. But anyway, this is the number of cases, and you can see that they have increased in Jefferson County, but it has leveled over the last few weeks. Now, one of the difficulties is this, unlike a few months ago, this is reported data from laboratories, which would be your doctor's office or the drive-through or whatever. These are not home tests. So the home tests don't get reported, even if you call it to the health department, that doesn't make it into official data. So the actual numbers of cases is probably at least twice that. Still lower than we had been, but the reported official numbers now are definitely not reflective of the real amount of disease we're having. And we know that from people just calling and talking about their illness. Next. So what steps next? So we're at the high level by so next week. So wear a mask in public. These are the suggestions. Stay up to date with COVID vaccines. Get tested if you have symptoms. That's important. Home tests are fine. They're accurate. If you have symptoms and your test today is negative, but you feel you have, test again tomorrow, or you can go get a more precise test from a practitioner's office. The difficulty with that is you probably have to pay a doctor's fee, which if you're at high risk, risk, talk with your doctor. If you are sick and you're older or you have serious medical conditions, maybe someone that should get monoclonal antibodies or another medication next. This is just what's happened as far as hospitalizations over the course of time for West Virginia, Jefferson County, USA next. So you can see just lately, our trends follow the nation and the state. It's a little different. There become so many, what's being reported. We don't know, but not much different. So we follow national trends. Next. This is the local data of what we have of who's in the hospital. Not all of the residents of Jefferson County end up in these two hospitals if they're hospitalized. Some are seen and transferred elsewhere. Some are seen for their first point of care in Hagerstown, or any of the
Winchester.
Winchester, Frederick, Washington, Nova. So there are a few more than this that are in the hospital, but not like we had before. Next. Wastewater detection of COVID is interesting. I'll call it a theory. It's not really mainstream public health as far as helping us to determine what we should do. We know there's COVID around just because we're detecting individual patients. So this is the somewhat recent data. Next, we don't now have, so Charlestown is the local area that has been doing it. The state was reporting this weekly to us of what the results were. They were about 2 weeks behind the actual taking. That's why it's not really helpful for making determinations. But as of last week, it's only going to be reported on the national website. Next. So the national website has a lot of different places. You can see all of the ones in West Virginia are colored that says no recent data. Their recent data is from more than 3 weeks ago. So I don't know why it's not getting reported. You can see it's not just us that there's lags in data. This is a new system. It's interesting. Probably will not report on this weekly because it's something that's out there, but it really does not. It's research. Next. Vaccinations. So this is where we as a county have been, the number of new vaccines has pretty much leveled off since November when the boosters and childhood vaccines became available. There are a few more, take maybe each week. Next. This is looking at one website I mentioned last time, West Virginia's DHHR data and the CDC data have some discrepancies. They're not that great, but we look pretty good compared to other counties as far as the number vaccinated. Next. This is we're still 14th best of 55 counties as far as the total fully vaccinated. Next. And we'll just go through next. So fully vaccinated, the main group I'm concerned about is over 60s, so 73 and 77%. That means a quarter of those over 60 have not had second dose, even if they had a first dose, they didn't get it. So a quarter of those people, and that's about a quarter of 7,000 people, are at higher risk of having severe consequences. Most of those people who got their first dose, it was over a year ago, so their immunity may not be as good.
So they didn't change the definition of fully vaccinated to include a booster dose?
So I'll show you another slide. Next slide. So this is the number who, so fully vaccinated means you got your first 2 vaccines. So you, now the number that are boosted. So part of the people didn't even get their second dose. And another 10% got their second dose in that. So we'll just take the 71 plus. So there are 35% of that population that should have a booster dose to fully protect them. We are seeing people hospitalized. Not everyone getting hospitalized now is hospitalized with COVID symptoms. They may be hospitalized for something completely different. We know that, it's going around in the community. If you happen to have to go to the hospital because you fell off the ladder and they admit you as a routine test positive, well, it could be like anyone else could have. But so not everybody that's hospitalized is COVID. In the past, almost everybody who was hospitalized with COVID because of COVID.
So they still test everybody by default if you go to the hospital?
They do, because they need to know, if someone's infected, they certainly don't want it. It's a semi-private room. They don't want, them in the room. And then they also, hospitals are a place where you want to be protected if you're sick. So they do test everyone. There are a small number, it's not most people, but there are people who turn out to have it. Now, there are other people who turn out to have it that wasn't suspected as the reason the old person got weak and fell, but that probably is the reason he fell. So
It was a study that came out of the UK that said that people who have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated and boosted, are now finding 4 times more likely to get COVID.
So there's a lot of interesting information coming out, and it gets into different groups, and then you try and analyze these subgroups and see what it means. So many of and among the problems becomes who's getting tested. So who got vaccinated? It's not everybody. It's not everybody is vaccinated. And who's getting tested? So some people are and who's getting tested and who's reporting if you're doing home tests. So not everybody who gets symptoms is testing themselves. Most people now are probably not going and getting laboratory tests. Are not going to show up. So it gets very difficult to know how to compare things now because the data is getting more confusing.
So that's your way of saying that you don't think that study's correct.
I can't analyze the study. There's other data out of Israel, and they're looking at different populations and trying to say the key metric now is how many people are getting severely ill. It does, unlike our hopes a year ago that the COVID vaccine would protect greatly against getting infected. It's clear, has been clear since the fall that that's not the case. But the big difference is if you get sick, if you get infected, how sick are you going to get? For the average person, even older people, the average person in relatively decent health is definitely going to be protected. Some people who have very severe, protected against severe disease, hospitalization, death. That's clear. Some people who
Not so sure it's clear, but if you said
some people who have severe immune problems, they're getting chemotherapy for cancer, they're getting immune regulating medicines for rheumatoid arthritis or something like that. There are a lot of Crohn's disease. Quite a few people getting medicines that suppress their immune system. They are at higher risk despite either infections or vaccinations. And those people, regardless of their age, really should be getting vaccinated because their immune system needs to help. And they also, if they get infected, could benefit from monoclonal antibody treatment. So, next, influenza is pretty well tapered off. There are still some cases, but not much. This is typical seasonal
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you believe that, I'm not even sure how to word this, make sure I'm not stepping on those things. What is your opinion of organizations that are regulated by the health department, such as daycares, that have a case, a child has a case of COVID, and their boards, which are private boards, but they're regulated by the health department, closing the entirety of the daycares?
We're not doing that.
So
I know you're not. For public clarity, I understand the health department is not doing that. It's the board of the daycare's decision to close based on one positive test from a member at the daycare. It has nothing to do with the health department.
So
It's
things
that
have
daycare's
changed
decision.
greatly over the last few months. And daycares were a special problem because there's no way you can expect little kids to keep their masks on all the time. You might think about it in a boardroom when that happens, but it is not going to happen. People may say it happens. If you look at them, you'll see that mask is on. So the guidance, the official guidance, and what was really able to happen. So some people were saying we must do it because that's the only way to protect kids. So our society, including different individuals, different groups, and their concern about liability, it has evolved in the thoughts of how we are in a restaurant recently, and they had a big disclaimer about if you come here and you get sick from they didn't say COVID, but from infectious disease by being in public, it ain't our fault. They also had one on the outdoor dining patio. You get bitten by a bug and get something bad. It ain't our fault. You decided to sit out. But it's so we're accepting individual responsibility and how much we know more about the likelihood of average people dying from this.
Well, so you're right with the private industry. The question comes, is these people have a contractual agreement to care for these children, which contributes to the economy of our community, but the parents can't make it work.
So I think that's something that, the board and the people they serve should have a discussion. Whether that's something everyone comes up with an agreement and signs that, these are the limitations of your kid's sick, keep them home.
Is your medical advice to close such facilities or not? Is your medical advice to close such facilities and individual?
We have not. Before there were more things, we do not report outbreaks of child care facilities. Almost the only outbreaks now.
So for the utmost, my understanding, one child at a daycare facility has COVID. Is not the Board of Health or medical directors advice to close the facility.
We talk to them individually about it, but it is no longer not going to work because the problem is that it's a rotating thing. How do you know who's in front?
No, should it be? It's like kid gets some flu or kid gets a cold, I mean.
Hold that board to task.
We're at a different point in
No
this.
kid has died.
So our understanding of, we're not talking about Shanghai.
Look, here's the reason I bring it up. From personal experience. I live it today.
Bring the kids and me, I'll babysit them.
That'd be fine. All right. They have closed in the past and currently closed, but and indicate in writing that it has something to do with us and the reason they're closed. That's not true.
Previously,
That's
there.
Previously,
Previously, there was that's true. There are
I want to seem like I was God.
there are many businesses, big businesses that still have their guidance from 2 years ago when this first started, saying you got to test negative before you go back to work.
And
that's not been the case for 2 years.
For childcare, I'd like to clarify, we have not been
established childcares, there is Bureau of Children's and Families, that's the main licensing agency, so there's two different childcare regulations that apply to them, the one that we govern and the one that Bureau of Children's and Families govern, and they are the main.
These individuals are pointing fingers right here, so I was for clarity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
They're wrong.
it's certainly something I'm willing to discuss with them. There is no,
Good, I'll have you call.
there is no way to prevent spread of this within childcare centers because most of the kids will have no symptoms or they will be symptomatic. They will, if they have symptoms, they will be infectious 2 days before. And we know little kids are all over each other, they'll have contact and all that. So that fortunately, severe illness is quite unusual.
Death is
Yes,
non-existent.
yes, some children will have severe illness from this. It's a tragedy, but there are risks every day.
Okay, all right, fair enough. That's, I appreciate your help. I just want to make sure we're not getting blamed
No, I think they're scapegoating.
for something.
Well, it's been confusing times.
It has been
You
confusing.
know, whether school boards or whatever.
Do you have any more on your report, Dr. O'Leary?
No, I'm looking forward to having our end join us.
Great.
Very good. So we move on to environmental activity report. So I don't have a whole lot for you guys this month. The numbers are, I didn't combine them all to see exactly how many we had. I was working on the information for short-term rental, so. Still, yeah, the food inspections, we still need to increase. I do have, I know one of our sanitarians will be leaving in August. I have wind training that will be finished in November, and then I have the other area. I'm hoping to get the other one on staff here soon. So, and that one will primarily be doing food inspections, that's the grant funded position. And that's what we need right now, it's more food inspections done. So, we have been dealing with several complaints lately too.
I did have one other thing. I will be away this month. David did my predecessor, State Department of Health. Will be covering that.
You're gonna be gone for a whole month?
No, for 10 days.
And I'll also be gone the 26th through the 1st.
We all be gone. I'll be out of town too.
It's a great time to go. End of June, going into the 4th of July weekend, that's time to get a vacation.
It's gonna be
I'll be
very hot
kind of
where
gone
I'm
too.
going.
So what 10 days is Mr. Didden? Dr. Didden?
23rd.
You'll be back.
What,
July.
what's our July meeting?
Is it the 9th? 8th.
Yeah, I'll be away.
Okay.
I won't be around.
We'll keep that in mind and make sure that we have make sure we have a quorum.
With the possibility we have to move it.
Yeah, we may have to move that. We'll see.
I'll be
We'll
in
announce
town.
Is it the septic permit now for those new applications? for subdivisions?
I don't have the information on the denial.
It doesn't have to be great, like, who else to close? That's
I
fine.
was keeping track of all that for a while.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
had asked for a while.
Why?
if I could report that, but I haven't recently, but I can. All right, we
Because
move
I think
to.
most
I've heard that too. It's one of the- All right, we're gonna move to clinical activity report.
So we don't have a nurse director to do it, so just a quick one-off for me. We did increase our vaccination for COVID-19 totals over the previous month. I think it was in the 80s the previous month. So what we're trying to do, and I know Dr. Reedy and I are on board together with this, is trying to increase our clinical services, the number of patients that come in with clinical services. I think that number shows a little bit of an increase, which is nice. But I do believe we're going, as school ramps up, we'll probably be hit pretty heavy with the childhood vaccination campaign coming up. And I noticed that one of the nurses was gearing up with some of the vaccines for children, the VFC program stuff, so to make sure that kids get their MMRs and things like that, get to school. Especially kids are from out of the country, and evidently we have an increasing Ukrainian population, so.
Well,
Temporarily.
There are few people we hear about.
Temporarily. It's not Polish.
Do you still require them to get the full round? When I first came here, I got the full round of everything.
It depends. So many people from other countries, we can actually get their documentation of what they received.
Oh, they didn't honor what I got in Vietnam. And then I went to Thailand and I got a whole round of shot. And then when I came here, they said, no, you take another shot. So
Yes, case by case.
Talking
Unfortunately,
about
sometimes
vaccine.
we-
Yeah, my sister and mother both got double smallpox vaccinations when they came to the United
Yeah.
States, so I understand.
the Red Cross don't take my blood because, yes, let's go.
Elliot turned around and said, "What?"
I'm over vaccinated. Let's move to the prep activity report.
Oh, I don't really have a whole lot for you. It's just going meetings and for the next fiscal year, I'm gonna be working a lot more on the budget for the third class. So that's something that previous
Involve some of the responsibility off me onto the coordinator.
Yeah,
So we'll loosen me up a little bit to do some other types of supervisory things that you've done.
That's really it.
Okay, so our next meeting scheduled July 8th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All approved, say aye. Aye.
There you go. There's your third.
Apologies, I got to run.
Yep.
See ya.
Thank you all.
Everybody have a great
You too. If we don't see you for a while, happy 4th.